Hello. My name is Michelle. I'm 50 years old, very excited about turning 50. And I'm a teacher who is trying to transition from teaching to real estate, in particular, being an affordable housing landlord. So, if you've been following my series, you'll notice I've been kind of going over different segments of my journey. So, I wanted to continue to focus on my rent by the room strategy right now. While I have done Section 8 and I will be moving back into Section 8 with my duplex, right now I'm just focused on my rent by the room until the rehab is finished with the duplex, which actually hasn't even started yet, but that's a whole nother story. So anyway, with rent by the room, the whole premise is that you take a single family house, and instead of renting it to one person, you're renting it to really like random people. They're not usually people who necessarily know each other. This has been about a year that I've been doing it. I really like it. I'm learning a whole lot. I feel like it's really growing me exponentially as a landlord because, in essence, even though it's one house, I mean, it's 3 tenants. So I'm learning how to manage, like different people and different leases and when they end and begin and all that kind of stuff. So, anyway, what I want to talk about today is my tenant screening process because that is really, really, really important. And one of the things that happens when you're a new landlord is you rush because you just want somebody in there because you're like, you know what, I really want some money. And you don't really take your time in screening the tenants. And I can guarantee you, if you do not, it will come back and you'll be like, oh, I should have just waited, because oftentimes it ends up costing you more money. So, what I do is I use a software called Avail, and that's where I list the property. Avail is pretty cool because it'll list your property on like 14 or 15 different sites, but it's all, they're all coming to this one software when you have inquiries and things like that. So I've been doing that. Originally, I was also posting on Craigslist, but I noticed that I guess the caliber of tenant was a little different coming from Craigslist. They seem to be people who were probably really, really in transition. And I think they needed probably more like wraparound services. They needed a little bit more than just like a room to stay in. And I found that advertising it on Avail, you really are getting people who maybe they're travel nurses or they're just trying to like save for a house, or they tend to be just people who are trying to save for a particular reason. They're not necessarily having like a major transition in their life. So I do that, and what happens is you get like email notifications that someone's interested. So how I do it, because I'm an out-of-state investor, is I try to schedule a once a month open house. There's probably a more efficient way to do it, but I find that like I don't want to waste people's time. And because I have someone, in my hometown showing the house for me when I need, when there's a room empty, it's just easier to kind of get the same person and then they get in a rhythm. So I tend to just do like the second Saturday of the month because, the lease will end at the end of the previous month. And then that way you have enough time to get someone in there to clean the room. And then, it'll be ready to be shown. So I do that. And when I reach out to tenants, I always text them or email them first and let them know it's a single room rental, not a 1-bedroom apartment. Because for whatever reason, even though it's in the title and it's even in the description, people still think that it's a 1-bedroom and not a single room rental. So just to maximize my time, I always respond to inquiries first, either with a text or an email, just saying, hey, just so you know, this is a rent by the room, a single room rental, not a 1-bedroom. Are you interested in attending our next open house? And if they say yes, then I'll let them know when the open house will be coming up. And I will call them at that point and let them know that we have 3 criteria. The first is that you need to make 2 times the rent. In this case, at most, you would need to make like $1,000. The second thing is that you can't have any evictions for the last 2 years. And then the third thing is you can't have a criminal record that shows anything violent. So, usually people are like, okay. And I love that people are very honest though. Like if they do not check one of those boxes, they will let you know. And because I'm a bit of a dinosaur, even though I do know technology, I find that I'm way better organized on paper. So what I do is as I'm calling people, I write their names down, and then I will put underneath their name, like if they said, well, I don't make enough, or actually I do have a criminal record that shows violence, or I was evicted, or, just whatever it is, or actually I was confused. I don't want a single room rental. I put all that down. So that way I just know, because if that person reaches out to me again, then I can kind of look over my notes and just see, oh, you know what, this is why, they weren't interested the last time. So I do that. Once I schedule an open house, they're invited to come. I do like a 2-hour slot, usually between 12 and 2, because I want to be respectful of the tenants who are in the house. And I kind of feel like by 12 o'clock, they're probably awake. And then by 2 o'clock, you still can kind of get some things done and you're not feeling like you have people coming in and out the house. Overall, I try to keep the number to between 5 to maybe 7 people. Just because, I don't want the person who's giving the tour to be overwhelmed. And I just think that's kind of a nice enough number. And I pay that person their hourly rate. And I also, regardless of, like, once people confirm and they say, yes, we're going to come, I tend to reach out like that Wednesday of that week, just calling or sending a text saying, hey, just confirming you're still coming at such and such time. And if I don't get any confirmations, I will still pay the person who was going to do the open house, because I just feel like I appreciate them blocking off the time. And it's usually not a whole lot of money, but I just want them to be available when I need them. So that way I don't want them to ever feel like, oh, she booked me, but then nobody came and then I blocked off that time and I didn't get paid. I could have been doing something else. So I always still pay them. And what I let the prospective tenants know is that if they're interested after they do the walkthrough of the house and they see the room, then they can complete the application, it's all done through Avail. Right now it costs, I think, about $50, and it runs a credit report, a background check, and what would be the other thing? Credit report, background check, and there's one more. I'm trying to think eviction report. And I do that, and it's really cool because it doesn't take very long. I mean, maybe 24 hours, 48 hours at the most. So you know immediately, who qualifies or not. So far, I haven't had to like pick between two tenants. It's usually just, it's just worked out that like I just take the first person who's completed the application, and they usually meet the criteria. And so from there, once, once that's cleared, then I'll reach out to the tenant and just ask them, when do you want to move in? And if they're, trying to move, normally they're moving in soon. So I tend to prorate whatever month that is. And Avail is super cool. Again, this is not sponsored, but that's just the software I use. It will create the payments for you. You can set up a lease through there. Now, what I do is I let them create the lease for me for my state, but then I tweaked it because there's some very specific things that you want when it comes to rent by the room. And you want things in there about like the house rules and how will people, decide about like, will people have company or, things like that. The other thing is, God forbid, if someone were to pass away or become incarcerated, well, what would happen with their things and who would come get it? And he's so funny. I don't know if you all can hear him breathing all hard in the background. But anyway, I have some additional things that, like, if you were just leasing to one family, you may not have, house rules necessarily because it's a family. So they would, have their own rules on how they function. Once the tenant says they're interested, they've applications cleared, I verbally tell them like the lock situation, but then I also text them the information. You could also send it by email, but I just find that most people have, regular access to their phones. And so what I let them know is that the main door, I have a security system that's through ADT or Simply Safe. So I do not give tenants that key to that door. They only get a code for that one. So I asked them, what 4-digit number would you like for your code? and it can have more than 4 digits, but I just feel like that's the easiest. And so that one they don't ever get a key for. But for the room, because now, if you saw my previous video, I talked about how the digital locks had kind of messed up. So I had to give the tenants the key. So now I've had to kind of troubleshoot for that, because I hadn't, when I set up the rent by the room house, I hadn't anticipated that the tenants would have the keys. I did have a lockbox set up outside, but that was strictly for like lockout purposes. Like if for some crazy reason the lock stopped working or the battery died and they needed to get in, and I could call somebody to let them in. But now that 2 of the 3 digital locks don't work and all the tenants have access to a key now, I've decided that what I'm going to do is mount 3 lock boxes in like a downstairs closet. And it's one of those like programmable ones. It's not digital, but you can just change the 4 numbers. I'm going to do that and do my little mailbox stickers again and just put 1, 2, and 3 over each one. And moving forward, when a tenant moves in, like the key will be in whatever box corresponds with their bedroom, because the person who moves out, I will give the code to right before they leave, and they can put the key in there. And then that way, when the cleaner comes, they'll also have the 4-digit code, and then they can clean the room and then put the key back in. So that's what I'm going to do moving forward. That's not what I did most recently, because I just didn't have time, and I haven't been up there to see the closet again. So I have to kind of see. So I'll be going up there in a couple weeks. So once the tenant gets in, though, I just let them know, you can decorate it however you like. These things need to remain in the room. I supply a bed, a frame, a 3-drawer organizer, a lamp, and a power strip. I don't supply linens or towels or anything like that, because again, this isn't a rent by the room situation. This is really just a rent by the room. So I'm assuming that people are coming with their own things. For now, I do let the tenants know that if they want to store things in the basement, they can. But I've also let them know that in the next few months, I plan on finishing the basement. So if they do have some things down there, I'll let them know when they need to move them. So hopefully that's helped. Avail will also, they have their own built-in version of DocuSign. So you can send like the lease information, the tenant can sign it. You can set up the payments, the dates they're due, if you're, late fees, if you need to include that. Also, a couple of my tenants do not use the actual Avail processing for their payments. They just do Cash App. And then what I do is I go in and I'll manually put the date and the amount that they've paid, which is fine. That works for me too. But I have been very committed to no cash payments. So I'm only accepting digital payments. So far, it's just been through Avail or Cash App. But if someone wanted to do Zelle, I would do that as well. So hopefully that helps you kind of see the tenant screening process as well as the move-in process. I know that some people do like landlord checks, but I just feel like I don't know how trustworthy those are. I hate to be that way, but I just feel like I know that sometimes if you have a tenant that is driving you crazy and the new landlord is calling to say, oh, would you recommend them? I just don't know if you would really say like, oh my gosh, they're driving me crazy, because clearly you would know then that, well, that might be a ding against them with the new person. So I don't even ask. Even though it pulls a credit report, I really don't have a number connected to that at all, because I know I'm in the process of rebuilding my credit. So I really don't, hold that against them. I'm really more concerned about, do they make 2 times the rent? And as long as they don't have any criminal record that shows violence, because of course you're going to be living with other people. So, I just want to make sure that everybody feels safe. So as always, I like to end these videos with a story time. This one is a happy story time, so I'm excited. One of my tenants just moved out. She was actually a travel nurse. And I was very concerned because right now, because that's my only house, that house is responsible for like covering the house expenses, but it's also responsible for covering the business expenses, which means if any one of those rooms is empty, then I have to dip into my savings to try to cover the business expenses. So I was thinking, oh man, I'm gonna have to dip into my savings this month. And it was just wonderful because a young guy called and said, hey, I really am interested in the room. And, I went over the criteria and told him, hey, there's an open house coming up. And he was like, you know what? I don't even need to see it. I trust the pictures. I really need a place. I was like, perfect. So he completed his application. Everything came back great. And he, was like, hey, can I move in like tomorrow? So this was like on a Tuesday. He wanted to move in on a Wednesday. So I always, I try to keep the lines of communication open with my rent by the room tenants, especially because, you don't want people coming in and out the house and they don't know, or they don't know what to expect. So I let them know that, he would be moving in. And I was really excited because he's a young guy, and I have one of the tenants is an older lady, but she's not super, like she's in her 50s. So she's a little older than me, but she just seems very motherly. And I thought, oh, that would be so good for him to kind of have, that person around. And so when I originally sent the text, she didn't seem very happy about the fact that it was a guy moving in. And I explained to her that, it just so happened that when she moved in, it was all ladies, but technically it is a co-ed house. So I was a little worried, but then she texted me after she met him and said that, he was a wonderful young person and she was so happy he was there. So I was like, oh, thank goodness. So I'm very excited about that, which also means I do not have to dip into my savings because now all 3 rooms are rented. And so I'm like, yes. So it's all working out. So I'm very happy. What I have decided to do, if there's people out there who are interested in Rent by the Room, I'm going to include a link in the description for a bundle of forms and resources that if you're interested in, you can get. And because I know when I started this journey, I spent a lot of time and a lot of cognitive bandwidth trying to find the specific forms that I needed. And unfortunately, I really couldn't find any because while you do hear about the rent by the room strategy, it's really not as easy to find stuff. And that was before I entered the world of AI. So, I mean, I guess I could have typed in what I needed, but I ended up literally creating it from scratch. So I didn't want anyone else to have to do that. So I'll have a link in the description if you're interested. And I've also decided that I'm going to start hosting live, I guess, info sessions about Rent by the Room for if people are interested in it. They'll probably be like maybe 45 minutes to an hour long where I can just walk you through exactly what I've done. And also if people are thinking of doing it or they're in the process of doing it, but they might have some questions and, I might be able to offer some insight. I'm going to do that too. So there'll be a link in the description for that as well. So thank you as always for following along. I'm definitely still, on the road of hoping to retire early from teaching. So the other 2 irons I have in the fire right now is I want to finish the basement because that way this house will be, I think the right terminology will be like single family multi-unit, I think, because then like the upstairs part would be the rent by the room and then the downstairs part would probably be a studio. I don't think I'm going to do a 1 bedroom. I think I'm just going to do a studio down there. And then of course I also have my duplex where it's right now it's a 1 bed 1 bath and then a 4 bed 1 bath, but I'm going to convert the 1 bed 1 bath into a 2 bed 1 bath by converting the dining room into a bedroom. So that project's a little further away because I want to get this other basement one up and running. Because right now I haven't secured any funding. I do have some possibilities on the table, but I haven't really had time because I was really like running the ads and calling people and trying to get that room rented. So now that that's done, I can kind of focus now on securing funding for the rehab projects I have going on. So yeah, so I hope you found that helpful. And as always, be grateful. Bye-bye.